feature enabled, but we are requesting that people hold off on putting your questions into the chat until at the conclusion of the presentation. We want to use it for technical support and to know if people are having issues hearing a presenter so that we can make any adjustments. If a term is not clear during the presentation, please note that in the chat, and we'll take note of it too, as well as a slide that is being made on, so that we can go back at the either during the presentation or at the conclusion and address it in a timely manner. So there are several representatives from county staff on here, as well as representatives of the supervisor's offices, about both Supervisor Palchuk and Supervisor Faust. So with that, what I'm going to do is go over the instructions about how you can raise and lower your hand and unmute yourself at the conclusion of the meeting for those who have called in. And from there, we'll get started. So Tim, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And just want to let everybody know this meeting is being recorded. We had another similar meeting, same presentation on Tuesday. That was May 17th. This is our second round of community meetings for this study. We had a first round earlier this year. So again, my name is Tim Kutz. I'm a transportation planner with Fairfax County DOT, and you are here for the West Falls Church Active Transportation Study. Active transportation, to define it, is really anything that is self-propelled, mostly human-powered travel. So that would be mostly walking, biking, running, but could also include electric scooters, electric bikes, things of that nature. So that's what this study is focused on, is how do we encourage folks to use those methods of travel around West Falls Church Metro Rail station, and how do we make the station more accessible and more comfortable for those users. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll talk about the agenda for tonight. So first, I have a few slides on background of the study, some of the plans that sort of went into influencing and the reason for the study. Talk about the study area itself. We have a 2-mile radius that we're looking at for bicycle connectivity, and then closer in looking at a 1-mile radius around the Metro Rail station for pedestrian connectivity. Then I will mention the advisory group, which is really the group that's sort of leading this effort. We've met with them several times so far throughout the course of this year and once last year in December. And they are really the ones representing the community and taking a look at the recommendations that we're putting forward in this study and sort of helping to prioritize those. They are supported by a technical group made of subject matter experts from VDOT, FCDOT, Wnod, several others, which I'll go over when I get to that slide. Talk about the study objectives. Obviously, I kind of mentioned one of them, but we have several objectives that we're hoping to achieve with this study, primarily, of course, connecting folks through active transportation modes. Existing conditions assessment. So that's going to cover a couple of metrics that we're using to look at the existing conditions around the Metro Rail station, looking at pedestrian connectivity through pedestrian level of comfort and bicycle level of traffic stress. So I'll talk about those sort of towards the middle of the presentation. And then potential improvements. We have some other ideas that are maybe a little outside the box that I'll talk about. I assume we might have some questions on those, so I'll certainly spend some time on those slides and cover those with you all. And then the study timeline, we'll finish things up talking about where we've come, how far we've come so far with the study, and where we're kind of heading next to wrap things up. And then, of course, Q&A at the very end. We go to the next slide, talk about the background. How the study came about really was from the West Falls Church Plan Amendment. In 2018, the Board of Supervisors authorized county staff to look at amending the comprehensive plan, the county's major planning document for subunits A1 and A2, as you can see on the map on the right. Subunit A1 is a collection of the Wnod parcels, and subunit A2 is a Virginia Tech. And what they asked staff to do is to see, what impacts might be to traffic, to other things around this area if we were to consider a higher intensity level of development, a mix of uses. So on the A1 Wamata parcel, looking at commercial, being office, retail, and also residential uses. Subunit A2, same thing with also looking at institutional use as well for the Virginia Tech campus. And so as part of that plan amendment, which was adopted in July of last year, they also instituted a follow-on motion. The Board of Supervisors asked for us to look at active transportation in the surrounding areas, the neighborhoods feeding into the metro station. Really, a lot of the neighborhoods surrounding, as many of you I'm sure know, are older, not built out with sidewalks and the facilities that we would really look for as being standard sidewalk facilities and bicycle facilities today. And so there's really a lot of work that could be done to enhance that for folks to get them conveniently and comfortably to the metro station. So that's really the goal of this study is to look at that in greater detail. The comprehensive plan amendment did include several provisions that do benefit active transportation users, wider sidewalks, pedestrian scale lighting. So that's lighting at the pedestrian level, not just for the vehicular level, but making sure that pedestrians can be seen and can see at night, as well as several other improvements recommended for pedestrians and cyclists. We can go to the next slide. A few other plans I'll mention. So the Wamata development, as I said, is you can see that sort of on the top portion of the map to the right. That is going through a rezoning application. And so they are moving ahead, the developers moving ahead with considering, this sort of layout here. As you can see, several different office buildings, multifamily buildings, and you can see a new street grid here. Virginia Tech is sort of wedged in the middle there, right in between the boundary of the city of Falls Church, Fairfax County, and Falls Church Drive. They are also considering a rezoning application, so we've heard. And they have a $10 million Smart Cities grant that they are working on in conjunction with the city of Falls Church, and Fairfax County as a partner as well. And basically what that is looking at ways in which they can improve the city's pedestrian network, bicycle network, but also looking at intersections for a mix of uses. So multimodal improvements at certainly Haycock Road, Shreve and Route 7, looking at using the signals to sort of let folks cross safely, comfortably, and trying to balance the different modes through what's called smart intersections. They also have adaptive lighting as one of their projects that they're pursuing, so that it's basically for energy savings, but also for pedestrian comfort, of course, allowing whenever a pedestrian kind of comes into proximity to one of these sensors on a light, sort of either turns on or emits a brighter light. So again, all these different technologies are kind of being rolled into this grant that would help improve walkability and bikeability, as well as vehicular travel in this area and through the city of Falls Church. But that's still kind of in the early stages. The really big project is the West Falls Development Project, which is being undertaken by the city. And you can see that fronting Leesburg Pike and Haycock Road, kind of towards the bottom of the map on the right. Their special exception site plan was approved last August, and they actually just had their groundbreaking for construction this morning. They relocated a high school. You can kind of see that up by the ball fields there, Meridian High School, and they're including, again, with same as Wamata's parcels, mixed uses at a higher intensity, residential, office, and retail. The key feature to note with these three applications is this sort of parallel roadway that runs from Leesburg Pike all the way up to Metro Access Road and connects to Haycock Road. So that's really going to be a big benefit to having sort of these planned comprehensively together. You have a new signal that will be going in at Chestnut Street and Leesburg Pike and the new roadway there. That'll allow folks to safely cross Leesburg Pike at a controlled signal. And then there'll be bike lanes running alongside that whole stretch all the way up Metro Access Road to Haycock Road, and then connecting up to, of course, the Metro Rail station itself, as well as wider sidewalks for pedestrians, larger buffers between pedestrians and the traffic moving along that road as well. So much better environment being created here for folks to sort of connect to the Metro Rail from the south. But what this study, again, is looking at is sort of outside this area. What can we do to actually get people to this great asset that's being built? We can go to the next slide. So again, with all that development, obviously that's going to have an impact on traffic. Traffic will increase, of course, with adding all these different uses in this area. And this is sort of a projection of what that will look like. We're looking here at average daily traffic numbers. These were collected by VDOT in 2019. They're collected every year and reported by VDOT. You can see that in the purple on the left below the roadways. And then on the right, you can see what we've projected using Fairfax County's travel demand model for 2045. So that's quite a ways in the future, but looking at what this area might look like in terms of traffic volumes on a daily basis far into the future, considering the levels of development at certainly the metro site, but also we kind of rolled in some of the growth that the city of Falls Church is considering farther south from the site and other developments sort of in the pipeline. So that it kind of considers all that. And you can see a lot of the traffic is mostly focused on Leesburg Pike, this kind of southern portion of Haycock Road. Things mostly stay the same elsewhere, but you do see some increases here and there. And so we want to make sure that when we're planning for these pedestrian and bicycle facilities, that we're accounting for that growth. If we need something that is going to be an on-street facility, for example, we might need to reconsider that given what traffic levels might look like in the future. Just one example of why this plays into the study. We can go to the next slide. A couple other major plans that obviously play a factor in this. This is not the first time we've looked at West Falls Church and connectivity for bike and ped. Obviously, we have the countywide trails plan, which was amended in June 2018. You can see that on the left. Pretty robust network planned for this area. You can see the red lines. Those indicate major trails that would run through the area. And then we also have the bicycle master plan, which was adopted in October of 2014. That has recommendations as well. And you might notice that they don't necessarily line up. And so Fairfax County is pursuing what's called the Active Fairfax Plan, which is a countywide effort to sort of consolidate these two, update the plan guidance, and include new recommendations. Obviously, standards have improved since 2014 and 2018, and so that effort is really looking to, again, make improvements to these plans, combine them into one document, and that study is ongoing. They finished phase one. And they are going to be working on phase two, which I believe will take another year and a half to complete. So we can go to the next slide. And when we have a little bit more information on Active Fairfax, they have a barriers to active transportation and destinations map. And this is a really helpful map. It's been helpful for this study. Folks have gone on here as kind of a crowdsourced map that allows you to click anywhere in the county and put in a comment. So you can select a comment type. You can see that kind of on the right there, barrier to transit access. You can put your name if you want to, and then add your comment, what is presenting a barrier, what you might want to see improved. You can even attach images. That's helpful. But there have been a lot of inputs already to this map. I think about 1,500 so far in the county, and then alone for this study area within the 2-mile radius, at least 100. So, we had a lot to work with, starting off with kind of thinking through what we want to see improved in this study, which is really helpful. Go to the next slide. Okay, and so that's a lot of background. Here is the actual study area. So you can see starting from the middle, you have the Metro Rail station, the West Falls Church Metro Rail station. And then the next kind of layer after that, you have this green shaded area. That's what's called the effective walkshed, and that's a mile. So basically anywhere you can walk within a mile of the Metro Rail station entrance using the existing facilities. So you notice you can't really get too far north of the station given some of the existing barriers, the Metro Rail Yard being the biggest one, and of course I-66, Leesburg Pike can sometimes present a barrier when there's not ample crossing, control crossing areas. So looking out from that, we have sort of this purple circle. That's the 1-mile radius from the station entrance. And then beyond that is the 2-mile radius. And again, we're looking at pedestrian improvements within the 1-mile radius, bicycle improvements within the 2-mile radius. A couple other key features to note here, and I know they're hard to see on this map. We wanted to show the whole thing. So if you want to see this, blow it up and zoom in and kind of look around, you can go to the website. But you can probably make out a couple of the blue dots there. Those just indicate different projects that are either recently completed. So we have some pink lines indicating the recently completed projects, and then some of the projects that are already kind of in the works and in the planning stages. So we have what's called the Transportation Priorities Plan. A lot of the projects in red are on that plan. So really a lot of work has been done. The last 4 slides have kind of been talking about a lot of work's been done to kind of consider active transportation in this area. So we're really looking to build on that. There are a lot of recommendations that I'm going to go over that are part of the survey that was released on May 10th. And so really the big task in getting results of that survey and with talking with the advisory group will be to prioritize all those, since there's really a lot that could be done around here. We can go to the next slide. So I mentioned the advisory group. They are a group of community representatives. We have, of course, 2 districts, supervisor districts within the study area. We have Drainsville and Providence, so we have representatives from each, as well as the school PTAs within the study area. We have several schools, elementary and middle. We have the McLean Citizens Association, Providence District Council, Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, and Fairfax Families for Safer Streets. They've been a great group. We've met with them, as I said, 4 times so far, and then had numerous calls and emails between us since the start of the study back in the end of last year. They are really the ones that are sort of bringing to our attention the priorities, the recommendations, the concerns from their neighbors. They've done a great job of kind of getting out on the ground and talking with their neighbors and getting them involved. So they're really kind of the backbone of this study. They are supported, of course, by the technical group. So FCDOT, of course, VDOT, Virginia Department of Transportation, Nova Parks, as well as others, obviously the schools, WMATA, Virginia Tech, a lot of different stakeholders in this area, and they can provide guidance on some of the recommendations that the advisory group brings forward or some of the problems that they might bring forward. So the technical group has been great to kind of offer their feedback, potential solutions, where we might kind of hit hiccups in some of the things that we're trying to accomplish and how we might be able to get past them. They've been great at really talking through those issues with us. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so objectives, the main one is the top one here, really trying to get as many people involved as we can in the study and ensuring that we're being transparent throughout the process. So that's the reason we're having 2 sessions each with the community meetings. We sent out a postcard to try to get folks involved. We're sending out another round of postcards to try to get people to take our survey. And this is not the last time we're going to have a community meeting. We're going to have another round in a couple months to sort of talk about the results of the survey and talk through how we're going to wrap up the report. So that's really the most important part of this process. I'm going to show my email at the end and really hope that folks will reach out to me if they have any questions after the call. Certainly during this call, we'll answer all your questions as well. But really want to make sure that people are staying engaged throughout and allowing opportunities for that to happen. Another big one, of course, improving safety, accessibility, and comfort for active transportation users. And we're doing that through the recommendations that we're making. Increasing connectivity not only to the metro station, but I mentioned there's a couple schools in the study area, the Washington and Old Dominion Trail, which is to the south. That's a major regional asset and a really key feature that we want to be able to connect people to from the metro station. Recommending and setting priorities is going to be really the biggest task of the advisory group. As I said, there's a lot of recommendations. We didn't want to leave any out. It's going to be a big list, but we didn't want to leave anything out. And we know we have to sort of look at all of those and group them accordingly and try to see which ones we can really hit sooner rather than later and which ones might be able to make the biggest benefit, so to speak, for the community. So that's going to be the task for the advisory group over the next couple months is setting those priorities, and the survey should inform that. Coordinating, as I said, there's the active Fairfax plan that's countywide. We're coordinating with them. We have some of their folks on our technical group, and they've been attending our meetings. Preparing some cost estimates, as I said, kind of looking at the low hanging fruit, so to speak. Some of these things we should be able to get done with, relatively little costs and get done quickly, and others may take years just because of the nature of the improvement and the impacts. So kind of getting a sense for those is going to be helpful as well, and can kind of help us with the priorities potentially. And then I mentioned the rezoning for the WMATA site. We really want to get this wrapped up, and I'm sure that we can before any decision on the rezoning takes place. So that's the goal of the study, is making sure that we're efficient and kind of keeping this thing moving along so that the recommendations that come out of it can inform that rezoning process. Go to the next slide. Okay, so this is one of the metrics that we're looking at. So we've done the traffic studies with the plan amendment, looking at vehicular traffic primarily and how these different developments are going to affect delay for people driving and how it might affect cars queuing at intersections, how long the line of cars is going to be stacking up on Route 7, for example. But for this study, we really wanted to focus on the pedestrian, how the pedestrian feels walking around this area. And we think that this is a good way to look at that. This is a metric that was developed a few years ago by Montgomery County's planning department with a group called Tool Design. And essentially what it does is it takes several different variables that could affect pedestrian comfort, how comfortable a pedestrian feels walking along a pathway. And that could be the width of the pathway. So if you have a 3-foot wide versus a 10-foot wide path, that's obviously going to affect how comfortable you feel. The posted speed limit, so how fast cars are traveling, and how far they are between you and the sidewalk. Buffer width is a factor there. Street trees, striped parking lane, bike lane, those kind of provide an additional buffer, so those are considered variables in the comfort score. Average daily traffic, I mentioned, obviously a higher trafficked roadway would be a little less comfortable for folks walking along that sidewalk, and whether there's a curb present. So again, this is not a perfect metric. This is actually the first time we're using not really Montgomery County's version, a Fairfax County version of it. And so I think it's at least helpful in getting an idea of how the different areas around the station um, might compare. You know, your personal experience in walking along your streets and your sidewalks may differ from what we're showing here, and that we're happy to take your feedback on those experiences. But I really do think it's a good way to kind of quantify the walking experience for folks and kind of get an idea of how we might be able to target some of the areas where we might see a lot of um, less comfortable areas. And so you can look at the scale at the bottom. The darker green is very comfortable, all the way down to having no pathway at all. And so that would be in red. And you can see there's quite a bit of red sort of surrounding the study area. Go to the next slide. Okay, so here's an example. We're looking at Shreve Road, the west side of Shreve Road, as we're approaching Leesburg Pike. You can see what that looks like on the image on the left. If you're walking on the sidewalk, it's quite narrow. The wall there doesn't help. There's a small buffer between you and traffic. It's a 35 mile per hour roadway, at least for this portion of Shreve Road. All those factors combined to make this segment, and you can see the overhead view highlighted in orange, an uncomfortable segment for pedestrians. So of course you can imagine how you can increase the score, making this pathway wider, lowering the speed limit perhaps, having a better or a larger buffer between pedestrians and moving traffic. Go to the next slide and we can see a positive example in the study area. This is Haycock Road and just north of Turner Avenue. You can see the trail is fairly wide here. It's 6 feet. The posted speed limit's 25, and you have a pretty sizable buffer between you and the traffic on Haycock Road. So this rates as comfortable. This is just, I'll mention one short segment of the Haycock Road Trail, as you can see on the image on the right. There are others that aren't quite so comfortable, and really that's been a key focus of the advisory group, is kind of looking at the entire segment from at least from Great Falls Street intersection to the Metro Access Road, and how we can make that more cohesive, more comfortable along the entire route. Go to the next slide. Okay, these next 4 slides have a ton of information, and really I wanted to show everything on these slides just because we've included this in our survey. But you can see here there are quite a lot of recommendations that have come out of this process so far. We're looking at one quadrant of the study area, the 1 mile study area that is. And you can see in this particular area, this is the Falls Hill community mostly in Leesburg Pike, they're missing a lot of sidewalk. So one thing we've discussed with the group, and I'll talk about this in a later slide, is okay, what can we do beyond just putting sidewalk everywhere, because we know that's not financially nor politically feasible, given all the other competing interests and looking for funding throughout the county. Nor would everybody want sidewalk. People don't always want sidewalk in front of their house, and especially if it comes at the expense of taking their parking away. And I think we've had to kind of think outside the box a little bit in terms of what we recommend here. But anyways, you can get a sense of what it's like to walk in this area, a lot of missing infrastructure. And so you see the nature of the recommendations are really kind of focused on filling those gaps, constructing sidewalk where there isn't any. You can see as well the darker blue, kind of navyish blue, those are completed projects, recently completed projects. So we noted those on the map, and then projects that are kind of in the works, as I said, on the TPP, for example, those are noted in sort of the lighter blue color. So again, a lot of various improvements here. One thing we've focused on the AG is really focused on is number 8, and that's improving safety and comfort at the Leesburg Pike, Shreve Road, and Haycock Road intersection. And we've talked about kind of the trade-offs that go along with that. The big way to improve comfort and safety for pedestrians, at least at that intersection, would be to sort of minimize the crossing distance, getting across Leesburg Pike. Obviously, that has impacts when you are um, either taking a lane away, such as the dedicated right turn lane on eastbound Leesburg Pike. And we've talked about maybe taking one of the dual left turns and making that a pedestrian refuge median. But we've kind of run the analysis for vehicular traffic, and it does have significant impacts, and traffic would end up backing up quite a bit. So, we want to make sure that we're talking through the trade-offs with the advisory group. Just because it sounds like a good improvement doesn't mean everybody's going to necessarily be on board with that. And so we want to make sure that we're identifying those trade-offs and having those discussions. But just one example, I'll talk about a couple more on the next slide. So for this next study area quadrant, you can see a lot more sidewalk, which is great. Except for Idlewood Road is really sort of the main roadway along this segment, as well as Leesburg Pike. So many of the recommendations here are focused on safely and comfortably getting across Leesburg Pike and across Idlewood Road. So whether that's striping high visibility crosswalks at all legs of the intersection, or including what's called an RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon to sort of alert drivers that there's a crosswalk present. Those have been a lot of the recommendations, at least for this quadrant. Another one that's proved a little controversial is number 7, and that's constructing a pathway for pedestrians through the Metro rail yard from Idlewood Road. That was actually studied. There was a feasibility study several years ago to sort of look at that connection, how much it would cost. It would obviously be very expensive to build a pathway all along the rail yard there to connect to Metro, within the tens of millions of dollars probably today. So that is something that the advisory group is also trying to weigh. Given the number of improvements that we're looking at, potential improvements, that is, where are we going to get the most bang for our buck? Where are we going to end up spending way too much money and not get as much benefit? And so that's something that we've kind of talked about with that particular improvement. And also, I'll point out Lemon Road Elementary School, sort of, if you can see number 9, it's right by that icon, trying to get students there. Right now, there is an existing connection from Pimmit Drive, but it's a staircase, so it's not accessible for all students. We're trying to think of ways that we might be able to accommodate everyone who wants to walk and bike to that elementary school. And so that's been another big focus of the AG as well. And we can move on to the next quadrant. This quadrant is looking mainly at Great Falls Street and a portion of Haycock Road approaching Westmoreland Street. So again, looking at filling the sidewalk gaps, certainly along Great Falls Street, which is a major roadway through the study area. Implementing mid-block crossings, so you can see number 3, Hutchison Street, crossing over to the other side of Great Falls Street. And then number 7, that's been a big one for the advisory group, is a crossing at Casemont and Haycock Road. There's Haycock Elementary School right on the corner of Haycock Road and Westmoreland Street, and that's a huge concern from many of the advisory group members, is how to get students safely to and from that school. There's a lot of students that walk and bike to that school. Fairfax County Public Schools gave us a tally, a walking survey, and it showed pretty high numbers for the amount of students that don't take a car, take a ride from their parents to school. There are quite a bit that walk and bike. So really making sure that they can be safely accommodated across Haycock Road is a key recommendation from this group. We can go to the next slide. This is the last quadrant. And again, we're kind of approaching the Metro Rail station here, mainly focused along Haycock Road. The big one here, if you've been to any of our meetings, is the Haycock Road pathway from Great Falls Street. So even improving the intersection of Great Falls Street all the way up to Metro Access Road. So a number of different improvements could be made to that trail, widening the trail, making sure that there's high visibility crosswalks at all legs of the intersection of Great Falls and Haycock Road, as well as a crosswalk over Turner Avenue. And then the bridge itself is quite narrow. The sidewalk there is quite narrow. So trying to expand that, widen that as you approach the metro station. So we can go on to the next slide and talk about some of the other potential improvements we've considered. So talking about Haycock Road, for example, there are 4 travel lanes south of the bridge, and actually including the bridge over I-66. And so one thing that we've considered is whether a road diet would be an appropriate solution to sort of help facilitate pedestrian and bicycle movement along Haycock Road. So a few benefits would be, obviously a road diet is sort of shrinking the roadway in, some cases just striping out through lane in each direction to accommodate a bike lane. And in many cases, as you can see in the example on the right, could even be moving the curbs in and having a dedicated cycle track or a bus lane perhaps. But the intent here, of course, is to make sure that you have a street that is multimodal. And then by shrinking the roadway, the space that drivers are using, you can also decrease the crossing distance for pedestrians who are trying to cross Haycock Road. So with that, of course, as I mentioned, for some of the other recommendations, we would need to conduct kind of a more detailed traffic analysis to see the impacts to vehicular movements. Obviously, we don't want to be clogging the roadways around the Metro Rail station, especially considering the additional traffic brought on by the developments. So just something to consider, but something that may be a little more outside the box for this area. A couple others on the next few slides. This one we have not tried in Fairfax County, nor I don't think has been tried in the state of Virginia, but it has been successful in other parts of the country. DC has done this. It's a slow street concept, essentially temporary almost barricades to alert drivers to indicate to them that they are entering a street that is a slower speed, so 15 mile per hour or less, really intended for local traffic. So if you live on that street, you can access it, you can go around the barriers, local deliveries, emergency vehicles, of course. But again, the intent is to make that street more pedestrian oriented, slow cars down in that area. So DC had limited success with this. It was really brought on by the pandemic. Other parts of the country, San Francisco, LA, they have sort of gone beyond the pandemic and implementing these as more permanent measures. And so, I think it's something that we'd obviously, it's obviously worth considering, but we would need to work with VDOT, of course, they own the roads, and we would need to kind of consider where this would be most appropriate and probably try it out as more of a pilot project, as a temporary thing, as DC did before we kind of go all in with this concept. But, we've considered this for Gordon's and Chestnut Street, which are sort of in that southwestern quadrant of the study area, as well as some other residential streets where we have, minimal sidewalk, if any, and then, maybe more traffic running through, cutting through those streets. So one concept to sort of help with that. We can go to the next slide, and this is sort of a similar idea, except we're looking at one-way streets. Again, we're looking at the southwest portion of the 1 mile radius here, and kind of what that would look like if you were to have a one-way street down Dale Drive. off of Leesburg Pike, you could then go the opposite direction on Chestnut Street, and then kind of repurpose that additional space for pedestrian, bicycle use. You could stripe out a bike lane potentially, and maybe some other ways you could use that along Pine Castle, for example, some of the other roads you can see on the left. Again, the idea is not everybody is going to be on board with sidewalk in front of their house. And not everybody is going to be willing to accept the cost and the impacts from doing that. And so this is sort of another more outside the box idea of how we might be able to repurpose space from vehicle use and use it for pedestrian and bicycle use. Go to the next slide. And of course, we looked at bicycle level of traffic stress, sort of a similar concept to pedestrian level of comfort in this case. This is from the bike map that Fairfax County created a few years ago, and we're looking at levels LTS 1 through LTS 4. Again, LTS 1 would be the most comfortable, so suitable for anybody, all ages, all abilities to ride, and you can see that really represented in many of the residential streets in the study area, all the way down to use caution, and I've highlighted those in red here. If you were to go on the link below to the actual map, they're in gray, but they don't show up as well. So those are in red, and you can see those streets are Shreve Road, Haycock Road, Great Falls Street, Idlewood, Route 7, really the major roadways that run through the study area. And so again, that's really where the improvements, not only for bicycles, pedestrians have been focused really along those major roadways. You can go to the next slide, and we have a list of recommendations. And this was really, I said on the advisory group, we have Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling. Their representative was helpful in helping us come up with a list of the major routes that cyclists would use, and those are indicated here, where we'd want to see improvements, either through an off-street facility, a shared use path, a bike lane, intersection improvements. Certainly number 14, you can see there, improving the Wnod trail crossing at Virginia Lane, just all around making these streets more hospitable, more comfortable for cyclists. So those are all indicated here. Again, these maps are a part of the survey, the community survey that is posted online. And so we've asked folks to go and rank these. Again, we realize that there are a lot of different recommendations. So we've asked folks to sort of indicate which ones they feel are most important, so we can really look at trying to address those more expediently. Go to the next slide. I think I just have a couple more. So this is the study timeline. Again, we started back in December of 2021, had the first kickoff meeting with the advisory group, and since then met with them and the technical group a number of times. We had the one community meeting, a set of community meetings already, and this is the second set we're in, really to inform you all about what we've done, since kind of kicking this thing off, and the community survey. So the list of recommendations that we just covered, that's mainly the purpose of this meeting, is to inform folks about that and about the recommendations that the advisory group has discussed. And then beyond this meeting, we would be looking to refine those recommendations. I've said a number of times, kind of prioritizing them, grouping them. And then after the study is completed, which we're looking to do summer, fall of this year, again, the work is not done. We need to secure funding for the projects that have been deemed a priority in this area, and implementing those. And so hopefully this study is informative, and we can kind of get moving on some of these improvements. As we've noted, there are quite a few of them that would be really beneficial to pedestrian comfort and bicycle level traffic stress here. So again, I've said this at the beginning, you can submit comments throughout this process. My email is going to be on the last slide, but here are the kind of the next steps immediately. Following the community survey, we're going to be meeting with the advisory group kind of talk about the results. Again, that survey is going to be running until June 13th. If you live within a mile of the study area, you should have gotten a postcard, and if you didn't, we're sending out another round because we've heard quite a few folks didn't get one. But there's a postcard with some more information, links that you can follow to get to the survey. We'll have that at the end of this slide deck as well. And as I said, the goal is to kind of hold a third round of community meetings at the end of the summer, and then towards the fall of this year, and wrap up the study and get get these recommendations out there for folks to see and hopefully take some action on the ones that we can address sooner rather than later. Okay, so with that, I did a lot of talking. We have plenty of time left over for Q&A. And again, if we don't answer your questions here, you can email me. My email is listed below. And then please complete our survey. I think we've had about 160 folks so far complete the survey. And thanks, Mike. He just posted the link in the chat. And with that, I'll stop talking and turn it over to Mike.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Tim. A lot of information. Hopefully everyone was able to kind of, good thing we'll have this information up on the website too, both the what Tim showed today, as well as individual maps, and then we'll also be able to have the recording up so that you can go back and track anything you need to. So so now it's time for the question and comment session portion of the meeting. We're requesting that when people do give their comments or questions, they keep it to about a minute. That way we can hear from everybody. We'll go ahead and when you're done, we'll disable your microphone and put you back in the queue. You can always raise your hand and ask more questions if you like. We just want to give everyone a chance to do it. So with that, there are 3 ways you can provide your input this evening. If you're on the phone, you can push *5 to raise your hand, and then that'll let us know that you have a question, and then we'll call your number, your 10-digit number, and then you'll have to push *6 to unmute yourself. We'll tell you when your microphone is enabled so that you can actually push *6. If you are on the computer, there are 2 ways for you to do it. You can either type your comment into the chat, or you can raise your hand. Again, it's the react button. It's got a hand raise. It'll be at the top right or the bottom of your screen. You can do that and indicate that you have a comment or question. We'll call your name, and then what we'll do is we'll enable your microphone, and then you will have to actually unmute yourself. If you're having technical issues with that, let us know. We have some solutions to kind of work around to try to work through it. So I don't want anyone getting frustrated that you can't speak. We have some other ways to try it. Okay. So with that, I see that we do have someone who has raised their hand. Pimmet Run Neighborhood J, I believe is what I saw. I'm going to enable your microphone. So your microphone's enabled. If you can unmute yourself. And I do see that you have unmuted yourself. Do you want to try to test your volume? And then for others who may not know, there's also a 3 dots as well. It says more. If you click on that and then you click on device settings, you want to make sure that the audio settings, both the speaker devices as well as your microphone, are enabled and connected to the proper device so that you can actually go ahead and talk. So Pimmet Run Neighborhood, I see your microphone's enabled. I'm going to try one more thing for you and see if we can't get you in here to go ahead and say your question. Do you want to try it again? So Pimmet Run Neighborhood, I'm going to leave you kind of where you are for a moment. If your microphone does become enabled, seems like you might have a chance now. I'm going to leave you I'm going to leave you where you are. So your microphone, you can control your microphone. If you can try to work through your device settings, or if you want to type in the chat and Bob can help you with some technical issues if you want to try it. I'm going to just move to the next person. We're going to still leave you there. So, and see if we can't get this to work. Sam Butler, you're next. I'm going to enable your microphone. See if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. I just wanted to share, thank you guys for what you're doing. One comment from lived experience in the area on the bike network improvement proposed projects, number 4, which would be the connection from Haycock to Grove, would be a really impactful and beloved project because what that does is it enables a connection from West Falls Church Metro and from the upcoming developments via Grove down to the Wnod Trail. Because Grove connects through a little park called West End Park, and that connects right on the Wnod. So, in terms of both people at West Falls Church Metro and at those upcoming shops, being able to have a really safe and comfortable way to get down to the bike trail and also kind of downtown Falls Church shops, and then also giving people who are on the Wnod a way to safely go up without needing to walk along the traffic on Broad Street, to be able to walk up Grove, cross Haycock, and then they're right there at the Metro and all of those shops that are going to be there. And this also unlocks a big path for students to get up to the schools in that area as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm glad that it's on the plans that you guys are looking at, and just wanted to say that, in terms of daily experience, that would be one of the biggest and most impactful ones, I think.
Thanks,
Great.
Sam. Yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that one because I didn't mention earlier on, but we are working with the City of Falls Church. They're part of our technical group, and that specific route that you highlighted, um, they are looking at Grove as sort of a bicycle connection in their bicycle master plan as well. So our recommendation here would kind of tie in with that, and as you said, connect to the WNOD trail. So I think that's a good one to highlight. Thanks.
All right. I'm gonna see if Pimment Run Neighborhood, do you have a chance to see if you can test your microphone and see if it's working? And just to let everyone know, if you're for some reason you're having issue being able to connect through the computer, you can always use your phone and call in. I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna get the number for you. It was in the meeting invite, but I'll go ahead and have one of us post it to the chat. So, in the meantime, I'm gonna get a couple of questions out of the chat. So Tim, let's see here. Could you explain more specifically what improvement you have in mind for the Highland Avenue Haycock Road intersection? Walking across Haycock feels precarious even with the light, which is a short light.
Right. So the Highland Avenue, that's really just striping a high visibility crosswalk across Highland Avenue itself. Let me zoom in on the map here. Um, but in addition to that, we're looking at number, let's see, 11. That's 11. We're also looking at number 13. I mentioned the road diet along Haycock Road. That would include, that recommendation at least, would include pedestrian refuge islands at Falls Church Drive and Metro Access Road. So Metro Access Road is that intersection that you're talking about right by Highland, kind of in between Highland and Grove. And that has also been something that the advisory group members have raised is, it, walking across 4 lanes of Haycock Road, there's a turn lane there as well, um, is not the easiest thing to do. And so sort of doing the road diet along with putting some sort of refuge island in the middle of Haycock Road would then allow pedestrians to get across a little more comfortably, minimizing the distance they'd have to travel.
Okay. We're still working to see if we can get Pimment Run Neighborhood enabled. Again, I've posted the phone number and the access code in the chat. So for some reason you're having some computer glitches with being able to kind of make it work, you can always call in and give us your comment that way. And I did post this survey link to the chat, so you have it as well as the project website. So please take that survey. It'll be open for until, as Tim said, June 13th. And if you could share with your neighbors and community members, that'd be super helpful. We want to hear from as many people as we can. Give us a good idea of what people are wanting to see kind of as far as improvements in the neighborhoods. So I'll give us another couple minutes to see if anybody has anything, whether you want to put it in the chat or ask a question, that's fine too. I will just, one of the comments that came in is, I live in the Southeast Quad and strongly agree with reducing the number of lanes on Haycock Road. This 4-lane stretch of road is completely unnecessary. Enabling bike and pedestrian traffic here is a must. So thank you for the comments. Okay, there is a phone number. So 571-489-3972. I am enabling your microphone. Please push *6 to unmute yourself. That's 571-489-3972. Unfortunately, there's no name for me.
Hello?
Hello. We can hear you.
Okay. So I'm the neighbor from Plymouth.
Okay, so what I'm
And-
going to do before you, there's
Okay.
an echo, so. All right, go ahead and give it a try now.
Okay. The neighbor is concerned he wasn't able to make the meeting about the crosswalk over Plymouth Run. And he's worried that it will disturb current, quiet, peaceful neighborhood.
Can I ask you to do one thing for me? Can you mute the audio on your computer? That'll cut the feedback.
I think I tried, but seems like it's not working. But I'll step away.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
So I'll just amplify on that from the other night. I do appreciate Tim getting in touch with me within an hour of contacting the transportation department on the bridge. And I guess the question is the priorities, because there's an existing access to Lemon Road, as Tim mentioned in today's briefing. It does have steps. And so what would be the cost benefit of upgrading that versus rebuilding an entire bridge between the two red segments? And then the other big question, which I asked the other evening, is out of the box ideas are things that do not just create bigger intersections with bigger traffic, but consider South Lake's tunnel access for Reston bikers to the South Lake Shopping Center. Okay, that's what you see in San Diego. And I referenced that the other night as, you know, we need people with that kind of thinking. And with Plymouth Run, who is going to update our neighborhood on the 2014 and 2018 plans for creating something with that easement? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so with the existing connection that you mentioned with the stairway, I think it's not so much a problem of cost as feasibility. Of course, given the grade, the reason for the stairway being there, it would be hard to kind of deal with that slope and make something that's ADA accessible. And so I think that's one reason why folks on the advisory group have kind of keyed in on the bridge plan. Again, that plan is already on the transportation priorities plan. Again, we're talking about the bridge from Pimmet Drive over using Red Road to Idlewood Road. Again, that's just a pedestrian and bicycle bridge, not carrying vehicular traffic. And I think folks have been focused on that because it would then provide a more accessible route for students who are trying to get to Lemon Road Elementary School. I do get concerns if you live on that road. Of course, folks folks walking through that bridge and down your street. But I think a lot of people have really kind of honed in on, especially with this study, getting students safely and comfortably to the schools, and so that's one reason that they focused on that improvement.
All right. There's just a couple comments, and then if there's no other hands raised, we can kind of conclude. One was road diet and pedestrian refuge on Haycock Road is an excellent idea. Visibility is not great for pedestrians trying to cross, and cars frequently speed. So thank you for that. And then another comment, and I'll just quickly chime on at the end. I'm not sure if this is even in your jurisdiction or Metro WMATA, but the right turn lane from Metro Access Road to Haycock Southwest bound is pretty tough as far as visibility on the rightmost lane, which you're turning into over the bridge. I think this actually makes it more dangerous for pedestrians and bikers, as the drivers may be anxious there. I'm eager to see what the road diet can do to help with the situation as well. I just want to say thank you for flagging that, because as Tim already said, that there is a zoning application that's coming in on the Metro side. So we'll hopefully be able to flag this issue and see if it's see how it can be addressed with that particular case. I do see that we have somebody with their hand raised. Richard Cranzy, I'm going to enable your microphone. Your microphone's enabled.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. We live on Highland, between Haycock and West. And a couple of things I was wondering about. One is about lowering the speed limit on parts of Haycock from the current 35 down to 25, so that people aren't zooming along there. And the second question, I guess, just has to do with whether there will be say, more vigorous parking enforcement on Highland. That at this point with the pandemic, it hasn't really been an issue. But I'm wondering, as far as just if parking becomes tight with all the new development, if the neighborhood may become overrun by other people parking on our street.
Okay, so
okay.
Both of those points actually were brought up last night. The parking issue could be addressed potentially. We do have a residential parking permit process that you could undertake to sort of dedicate those areas along Highland Avenue for residents. That is something that you could look at in terms of parking. For speed, we have considered that as well. That's part of the survey, sort of, we have all these infrastructure improvements listed here, but again, other improvements to pedestrian comfort, as I mentioned, speed, reducing the speed could help. And so that is something that the advisory group has recommended, not just for Haycock Road, but Great Falls Street as well. Sort of looking at the speed there, whether it's appropriate, whether we can do a speed study with VDOT to potentially adjust that. With that being said, again, we've heard from a number of folks that live in this area that people ignore the speed limits. Unfortunately, it's harder to change driver behavior, and so we wouldn't want to just artificially lower the speed if it doesn't make sense. I think one way we could again look at improving comfort is sort of through these more infrastructure focused improvements, making sidewalks wider, making it safer, more convenient for folks to cross. But I just wanted to mention that speed is something that we have considered as a potential thing to study and improve.
And as far as parking enforcement in Highland, if it becomes an issue, again, we will make sure you can always contact the department, the DOT, but it is actually a police enforcement issue, so they would have to be the ones that come out and actually issue the tickets. But if that becomes an issue, then you can always inform the police non-emergency line or inform DOT, and we can always inform the police non-emergency line. Okay, David sorry, David, there's no last name. Your microphone is enabled. You can unmute yourself. And if you're looking for the unmute button, it's on the microphone. It's either at the top right of your screen or down at the bottom center of your screen. And what I'm going to do is try one more thing to help you out here. If you want to try to unmute yourself again, give it a try. And this is David. There's no last name. And so what I'm going to do is leave it there. If you are able to unmute yourself, we'll go ahead and just ask you to just kind of be quiet for a moment while I call the next person. And then when you're able to, you can talk. So phone number. Yes. David, you have your camera enabled, but not your microphone. So there's a mic button next to your camera. You want to give that a try. There.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
You can.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I have to say that part of the reason that I did this is because I was at the meeting. This is David Wehrman. I'm sorry. I don't know why it just lists me as David. A lot of you will know me already as the chair of the task force for the citizen task force for the comprehensive plan change. And I'm not sure why it has me on there as just David. I have to confess that part of the reason I did this is because I sat through the whole meeting Tuesday and could not for the life of me figure out how to participate. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is somewhat flawed. I clicked several times on this thing next to my camera. This is mute and unmute, and that was the first time it worked. I also, just for the record, see absolutely no way to get into the chat room. What am I supposed to do to get into the chat room?
Sure. So there's a chat feature. It says chat. It should be actually says chat next to the react button that has your hand raised. It's got 3 lines with kind of a little
okay, well,
comment box.
Wait just a second. Sorry to hold everybody up, but I find this problem. So I see where the hand raised is. I see where the participants is, and I see the thing saying more actions, but I don't see anything with chat on it.
Is there anything else that's highlighted for you?
No, I see a phone hang up. I see request control, show participants, lower hand, more actions, open share tray.
Try clicking more actions.
Yeah, I did that, but then nothing says anything about a chat. It says keypad. So I won't drag this out, Tim. I'll talk to you about it later, but I'm sorry. I've used Microsoft Teams before. I'm not sure why this is such a problem on these 2 meetings, but I've been able to use them a number of times before, and I'm finding this almost designed to thwart people's participation. So I will briefly at least talk about some substance, which is I think you were aware, but I want to make sure you definitely are aware that in these 2 meetings, we've had a number of people from the Ellison Heights, Mount Daniel community who have commented or at least watched, and you may not have heard from all of them, but we're all very aware of what's going on. And you will have received, Tim, I think, an email from Bob Boggs, our representative on the advisory group, that had a list of things that we wanted to see in our community that would help us in terms of active transportation. To be honest with you, I think our main focus, as I've said a lot during the task force meetings and in my vote on that, is that there's just too much traffic. And I don't know how many possible things you could do to help active transportation that could compensate for the overwhelming traffic we're going to see on our streets. As to the residential traffic administration program, that's okay as well as it goes, but my experience of that is that it only extends a certain degree away from the metro. There are some there are some signs restricting traffic on the lower part of Highland between the top of the hill and Haycock already. But I don't know how well they're enforced or how much problem people have. And those things will not extend to our entire neighborhood if my experience is correct, because there are certain limits that are put on them. Like I live on Oak Street. I'm too far from the metro to have those placed on our street, I've been told. And what's more, even though we're near an elementary school, we're not close enough to a high school to warrant putting on RTAP restrictions. So this is not really like, well, I know you say, well, you can go and approach that, but I don't give a lot of hope out that that's going to make a big difference. I just would ask you, though, to please take into consideration the several measures that Bob Boggs has submitted to you on behalf of our community. I particularly point out the already dangerous situation at the foot of Highland going into Haycock. If you try to walk from the metro up Highland, you'd better cross it right at the foot of the street because cars zip around that corner, can't see any pedestrians. I would certainly say you need not only a very obvious crosswalk, but maybe even a raised crosswalk there. And there's several other things that Bob mentioned that I won't go into, but we are paying a lot of attention to this. Again, I think our biggest emphasis is going to be on just the amount of traffic and how to control it and keep it off our streets. So thank you for your help. And Tim, I may take this up with you later as to how to find things here, because it's a little frustrating. Thank you both.
Our apologies about the technology, David, but
Okay.
thank you for participating.
I'm probably the only one. But at the last
We've-
meeting, though, it seemed to me a number of people were having trouble because you couldn't connect with them.
We're trying to work through some glitches here, so we
Okay,
appreciate
thanks
it.
very much.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to put you back in the attendees.
Great, that's fine.
All right. Okay, let's see here. Trying to get some of these things. Phone number 407-797-8736. Your microphone is enabled. 407-797-8736. Please push *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. It's been very informative, and I love some of the suggestions. And I think I'd like to throw my support behind a number of other people in decreasing the number of lanes on Haycock Road, as mentioned by a number of others in this meeting. You know, speed is a problem here. Pedestrian safety is a problem here. You know, there are a number of things, as you mentioned, you can do to improve that. Very excited to see you put Haycock Road on a diet. It is too fat. Further down, I think Haycock extends the path or continues towards the Wnod trail. I know you're already working towards that, but I'd love to see better bike safety in that area and connecting, you know, Haycock and the Wnod with a good bike lane would be very exciting for us as well. So again, yeah, live in the southeast quadrants, and very excited to see some of this occurring. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Tim, there's a couple questions here for you. This one's a little long, but it's a good question, so bear with me. Are there any plans to utilize processes like tactical urbanism with these projects? Excuse me, to get smaller scale and faster deployments and build them up incrementally with real world feedback? This could perhaps unlock some of the more experimental approaches described in the slides, building them up as they perform and prove out, and getting a more cost effective plus faster start.
It's funny that you mentioned tactical urbanism. There was just a webinar that some of us in FCDOT attended yesterday or a couple of days ago. So yeah, that's a tough one. I think the term we like to use is a pilot project. So sort of testing things out in a way that maybe isn't so much unconventional and doesn't break all the rules, but tactical urbanism is something that is being espoused a lot nowadays. And I think there is a case to be made for being more agile. You know, a lot of times these plans take years just to get a sidewalk in, or sometimes even a crosswalk. But, you know, I think I think a lot of the people that we work with, VDOT, of course, and other folks within the county itself, um, are looking at these issues and are, again, thinking more outside the box and some of these more unconventional measures, like the ones that I mentioned, slow streets, for example. Hopefully, those can catch on, and we can, be able to test some of these things out and see if they might have a better benefit.
Okay. Jeff, I'll see if you can help me assemble that question that just came in. There was one comment. Oh, there is Cheryl Sim has her hand raised, so I'm going to Cheryl Sim enable your microphone, and I'm also going to do one more thing too.
Don't put my camera on.
Oh, I wasn't. I was just going to
Please
try to
don't put
make
my
it
camera on.
easier. I didn't put anybody's camera on last time.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Cheryl Sim. I am a member of the Active Transportation Advisory Group. I'm also a member of the McLean Citizen Association Transportation Committee, and I note that along with David Werman, we have quite a few, not quite a few, but a good number of members of the transportation group. I have to say, Tim and Mike, I'm pretty disappointed with the turnout on Tuesday and tonight. I think we've had barely 40 people attend these meetings. So I want to make sure that the people who are really interested know that they can also attend advisory group meetings. And even though folks are limited who are not advisory group members to the last 5-10 minutes to ask questions, they can do that. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because I have a lot of questions for you about these presentations, about the materials that have been shared in the last couple of weeks that we really need to go through. So I'm going to dispute some of the kumbaya image that you've created tonight and Tuesday night about how well the advisory group is working and the very limited access that we've had to the technical advisory group. FCDOT has had a good deal of access to the technical advisory group. And in fact, you're the interface. I don't want to bore people with all of these process issues, except to say process is important because it does affect the outcome. So I'd like to know, when are we actually having the next advisory group meeting? And again, nobody in my community got that postcard, so we'll just call it postcard failure and move on from that. But again, when is the next advisory group meeting? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, I would agree with you. I'd certainly hope that more people would turn out, and that was certainly a failure on our part. We tried to get a postcard out to everybody within the 1 mile radius. For some reason, that didn't happen. It kind of went out to some folks, but not everyone. So we are sending out another round. I've checked over that list with our team that sends the postcards out, and that is getting out to everybody within the 1 mile radius, and hopefully by early next week. But you raise a good point. We do have advisory group meetings that everyone can attend. And if you go to the website, those are recorded. So if you want some more background information about what we've done so far, you can watch those recordings and attend future meetings. We don't have a set date for the advisory group meeting yet, meeting number 5. Likely sometime in July, but we want to make sure that we have enough time before we meet again with the advisory group to compile the results of the survey, make sense of them, kind of group the results so that we can kind of talk through that with you all. But very good point to raise, that folks should attend those if they're interested, and certainly we can even talk about including more time for public comment at the end of those meetings, since you're right, we kind of have a lower turnout for these two.
Right. So there's a kind of a comment in here just to let everyone know Highland Avenue is currently zone 8, meaning only residents get parking permit hangers for their own cars and for one guest. I think that's more just an information item. There was a comment here about improving traffic signalization and crosswalks at Great Falls and Haycock to favor pedestrians, I believe is the question. So I think it's just a comment noted. So, okay, thank you. So with that, I do not, let me just double check something in here. So I do not see any more questions in the chat or anyone with their hand raised. So I want to thank you all for participating in the meeting tonight. Again, we do have another public meeting, set of meetings are coming up in the next probably month and a half, 2 months, somewhere in that time frame. June, July is when we targeted. So we definitely are going to look through what happened with our postcard mailings and make sure that doesn't happen again, and get the word out that we want everyone really to hear us and to give us their feedback so that we can present this information in a consolidated way for the advisory group to be able to digest it to help prioritize and make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. You can see the survey link is on there, as well as Tim's contact information should you have any questions or comments. So with that, we want to thank you all for participating in the meeting tonight. Please take the survey. We are sending out another survey, and it should be kind of getting in the mail early next week. We'll have a QR code for everyone, and we'll make sure that it reaches everybody this time, or do the best we can. So thank you so much for participating, and have a great evening.
Thanks all.